This is Bruce DuMont, live coast to coast and border to border and around the world at beyondthebeltway.com and on this great radio station and TV station where you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook Live. Nice to have you with us. Our two Republicans this evening are Josh Cantrow and Marty Garrity. Our two Democrats are Philip Beverly and Christine Schambacher. And it's great to have you with us. They've disagreed on virtually everything this evening. We're going to take a couple of calls in just a moment. But Josh, before the break, there was a question about, you raised the point that there had been a recent change as to a whistleblower and restrictions on whistleblowers. So set it up, and then you found evidence during the break.
Yes, I wasn't making this up. This was reported by Sean Davis in The Federalist a couple of days ago. Federal records show that the intelligence community secretly revised the former whistleblower complaint form in August 2019 to eliminate the requirement of direct first-hand knowledge of wrongdoing. So what we have to remember here is that the whistleblower complaint here deals with second-hand knowledge, not first-hand knowledge. The whistleblower here did not hear the call. He did not hear a recording of the call. He was not present when the call was made.
Doesn't mean that the content is not true, and the IG has found that this report is creditable.
So it'll be investigated. But the point that I'm making is that it does lend credence to the concern that perhaps this was a deep state hit against the president. I have not been a deep stater. I don't utter those words typically, but I'm starting to get concerned with all of the leaks and with now this change in the whistleblower form.
Would you, going back to the charges against Joe Biden's son, Hunter, the president, some people might have said, in fact, last week on this program, I asked the question when it was a fresh story, why is the State Department asking Rudy Giuliani to go there? And by the way, it was reported by Fox today that Joe DeGeneva, another pro-Trump lawyer, has also been asked to participate in this, as well as a third one. So Fox is adding more than just Rudy Giuliani to this case. So the question is, if I'm the president of the United States and I want to know more about this Joe Biden story in the Ukraine, where better to go than the Ukraine for the story? Because if the president had picked up the phone and asked his FBI or CIA or Department of Justice to investigate, then whoa, it would have been Katie by the door. Here the president is using his own people to go after a political opponent. So what else did he have to do? He couldn't trust the FBI to follow up on it. He couldn't trust the CIA to follow up on it because he doesn't believe everything that the CIA and FBI have said, because he has good reason to trust, where they are in conversations with Donald Trump. Now, he does trust the Secretary of State. So he can go to the Secretary of State, who he does trust, and he can say to the Secretary of State, I want you to send Rudy over there, because he trusts Rudy, because Rudy is his attorney. So the only way for the president to follow through on this story, to find out what the Ukraine really knew, was to go to the source, was to go to the Ukraine. He couldn't trust his own people. This is a president who cannot trust the FBI and the CIA. And this whistleblower is just a good example. He's a CIA agent working with six people in the White House who also are telling tales, not necessarily out of school, but they're talking to someone who is now, obviously, is out to get the president with his revelation.
Bruce, the CIA and the FBI don't work for the president. They work for the United States of America,
correct.
The people. And if Joe Biden had done something in the Ukraine and violated Ukrainian law, the president of the United States has nothing to do with that. He has to violate American law. And until the Department of Justice, who he can go to, says, yeah, he violated American law, we're charging him with this crime, then this is just a political attack, a thing of value that he's asking from a foreign leader.
Also,
I'm not denying that. What I'm also stating here is the president of the United States doesn't trust the FBI, doesn't trust the CIA, and has good reason not to trust them.
And
I
Bruce
completely
also
reject that. He should be trusting the FBI, the Department of
Why?
Justice, because
With
they
the
don't.
with the
They put
cesspool
the
at the top of
country.
the-
No, I absolutely reject that. They put the country above all
Comey
else.
did not put the country
And
up
Peter
front.
We can
Stroke
disagree
put
on that.
country
And then your
above all
comment
else?
about that this person, I think you said something like the whistleblower is out to, quote, get the president. No, the whistleblower is trying to protect our country
And
from
our national security.
Thank you. From
And
a president
what-
who's
okay.
committed
What-
high crimes and misdemeanors.
what about Peter Stroke, as Marty just brought up? I mean, this
Okay,
is a
so-
guy who was not doing what he should for the country. He was trying to get an insurance policy in case to get Trump out. But I want to go to
The
another
guy
point.
he trusts is Rudy.
Right, and
Then put
presidents
Rudy
have
on the payroll.
but presidents have always had personal
Yes,
envoys.
who are
Donald
not
Trump
on the
is not
payroll.
the first president. In fact, they all have had personal envoys who are not on the payroll.
But what they haven't done is go to a foreign country and ask that foreign country to intervene with U.S. elections and go on a hunt
Just-
against
not what's
their
happened
biggest
here, though.
political
Just to
rivalry.
investigate.
He didn't
Christian.
ask him to interfere in the election. He asked him
Yes,
to
That's what he
investigate.
wanted. That's actually the
Against a
intent.
guy who he's running against.
Yes.
But there's nothing
That's
wrong with
interference.
asking to investigate. That's not interference.
That's
And
a thing of
not
value,
who's
isn't
running
it?
against
It's a thing of value.
Biden
isn't
is
it?
not the
This was meant to
presumptive
hit
nominee. Biden is not the presumptive nominee. He's one of
Then
about
why do
20.
you ask about Biden?
Because Biden is, there's evidence of corruption with Biden
Where's
and
the
his son.
evidence?
Oh, there's a ton of
60
evidence. Read the
$50,000
New
a
Yorker
month.
article. Read the Politico
$50,000 a
There's
month.
questions.
For 4.5
$50,000. There's a
years.
lot of
You
questions.
think that that's corruption? Seriously?
Yes.
I
Wait
thought you were a
wait, wait,
capitalist.
wait a minute.
Aren't
Wait
you
a-
in favor of people
wait a
making
minute.
whatever they can make?
Wait
and
a
now
minute.
because Hunter
Not-
Biden makes $50,000 a month, it's
because
obviously
wait a minute.
corrupt.
He's
Come on.
he's got no experience.
Wait, hold on.
Donald Trump had no
Hold
And
it.
his
experience.
children
Folks.
and
What's
the
the
money that
experience
they're
question?
making in foreign
Folks,
governments.
folks,
Kushner has
folks,
experience. He can barely.
folks, I'm shocked, Phil, at what you just said. You said that you see nothing wrong with the son of a vice president or a president, anyone, getting $50,000 a month as a retainer for a company that is under investigation by a foreign nation when their father is in charge of that country's relationship with the United States. I can't believe you said that. That is
This
the
is the-
biggest
this is the
conflict I-
area-
That's the biggest conflict I can think of.
But we
I
don't deal,
couldn't make
Bruce.
up a conflict
We don't
more
deal
than
with
that.
conflict anymore. There's no conflict of interest. Donald Trump's
There's a
presidency has completely eliminated all the norms and values that this country has stood for
This
hundreds of
no,
years.
no, no.
But
So
this happened
now-
under
that is
Obama's
really
watch.
profoundly
This
evil to
happened
say, Phil.
before Donald Trump.
And that-
This
and I
maybe
find
maybe
out about
maybe
it.
Donald Trump learned
Donald
something
Trump's
from
the
Joe
president.
Biden on how to get your son on the payroll.
No, his kids have been on the payroll from the beginning. So he didn't learn that from Biden.
Also, what's
His
very
Donald Trump has
disconcerting.
been on his
Hundreds
payroll.
of millions of dollars as a result of being president. His business properties are
Boy,
tanking.
on that appeal for a tag day for Donald Trump, we'll be right back with more conversation and phone calls.
His mind
Bruce
was
Dumont back. We're going through a little old history here, but finish the story about John McCain and then we're definitely going to go to calls.
So when I was a ROTC cadet at Arizona State, John McCain came to speak to the detachment, and he had just been elected to Congress. And we all knew as cadets that this guy was legendary as a surviving POW.
Sure.
That he was the son of an admiral who was the sink pack at the time that he was captured. That they offered to release him. The North Vietnamese offered to release him,
Yes.
and he refused because he wasn't going to break trust with
Right.
his comrades.
Mm-hmm.
The guy was a legend, and the way that Donald Trump has historically treated him is unconscionable. And Republicans who think that that's okay, I can't meet them in any intellectual space just because of that.
The only
That
people,
treatment
the
of
only
him,
people who
that's
treated
unconscionable.
the only people who treated McCain worse than that was the Democratic Party and Barack Obama and his media friends when McCain was running against him. Until he was running against them, he was a saint. But once he was running against them, they were all over him. He was a racist. He's every bad word you can think of. They used that against McCain.
Trump's
Amen.
comments take the win. On
No,
that.
no,
They take
calling
calling
McCain
him
a
weakling,
racist.
that he only likes winners, people who weren't
Weren't
POWs.
captured?
Are you kidding
Weren't
me?
captured?
Those are
Are
vile.
you serious?
Wait a minute.
Calling
Vile.
McCain a
Christie,
racist is worse. Like the Democrats
Wait a
did.
second. I want to just put it in context because I didn't want to do a whole segment of John McCain. We've done them ad nauseum over the years. There's a difference, and I've said it on this program. There's a difference between John McCain, the war hero, and I use that term, and I agree with that term, and John McCain, the political figure. When he was 2 years into a congressional campaign or office, conservatives loved him. His political actions and his political activity moved him further away from strong support within the conservative movement until the end when he was not. When he went in there and put the thumbs down, a lot of Republicans were upset with that. Now, in my view, he did it because Donald Trump insulted him personally.
Right.
It was a personal vendetta. Of course, no one thinks that John McCain had a personal vendetta. He did, okay? He had every reason to have it, but he had it. And people who try to, whitewash that, they forget it. This guy was not a true blue conservative towards the end of his career. Look at the way the national media lionized him for 6.5 weeks. Was it 6.5 weeks or 6.5 days? The funeral. I guess it was 6.5 days. It just seemed like 6.5 weeks.
Very long. But
So the point is, you have to acknowledge there's the public face of the war hero, and then there's the political reality. And by the way, what Donald Trump said, and I agree with you, I was floored and offended by candidate Trump when he made some comment about John McCain. He said, "I admire war heroes that weren't captured." I said, to me, that was, I think, the first time we said on this show, we may have done a whole show on it, okay, Trump is toast. We did many shows like that where he said something and we thought his campaign was over.
Right.
But he won the Republican primary. The things that he said about John McCain, they were overlooked by Republicans who did not want the establishment. They didn't want Jeb Bush. He also said that he put blame on George W. Bush for the war, for getting faulty information to start the Iraq war. He said that. I said, oh my God, here he goes again. This guy went after the conservative base with 16 other challengers, and he beat them. So of the 62 million people who voted for John McCain, there's a lot of those 62 million people who agreed with his assessment of John McCain, like it or not. And that's a fact of life. I mean, Donald Trump is a hardball player, and he will always continue to play hardball. And my quick political question is, before we go to calls, and that is, to what extent does this story, in your view, Christine, does this sink Joe Biden as a viable candidate of the Democratic Party?
No, I don't think so, but I do think it sinks Trump.
Okay.
I
But
disagree with that.
even though every story that's going to be about the impeachment inquiry, Donald Trump or Rudy Giuliani, they are going to find a way to continue to bring up the story about Joe Biden.
For distraction, absolutely, because they're going to try to distract from the high crimes and misdemeanors that were committed.
It's not a
But they're
distraction.
gonna-
It's absolutely a distraction.
They're gonna force the media.
Politico does not think it's a distraction.
Nope.
The New Yorker does not think it's a distraction. The New York Times last week did not think it was a distraction. It is a legitimate issue. And I will go on the show, and I've said on the show before that Biden will not be the nominee. Biden is toast. You look at his betting market numbers, they have sunk 30 points. Elizabeth Warren, 52%. Joe Biden is now at 17% in the betting markets in the 5 days since this story has come out.
And
he was leading.
And the one thing that Joe Biden has always had going for him is that he's a good guy. He's a nice guy. People generally like Joe Biden. They generally do. He looks good. He always had this beautiful family, had this tragic start to his political career. He was a sympathetic figure. That's one of the reasons why I think he was selected, to run with Obama. But now, for the first time, and by the way, he's never had to play defense. Now he has to play defense. Joe Biden has had, he's had cakewalks to the U.S. Senate. He was not
from MBNA.
He was not roughed up by Barack Obama even in the primaries where he ran and lost. So this guy, after 30 plus years, whatever it is, in the public eye, he's in pretty good shape. And then he has this heroic story about his son dying of cancer and his children being killed on the day that he was elected to the Senate with his wife. I mean, he has a horrible personal story.
Right.
Overcoming a tragic story, which I still think probably a third of the American people, they don't even know that story. But now, you couldn't ever attack Joe Biden on any of that stuff because he was pristine pure. Now, it's the other side.
Bruce, I would say...
the Hunter. He's got a Hunter problem.
Bruce, I would say, though, that his character was not pristine pure.
Okay.
He cheated in law school, and he plagiarized.
This I don't know.
Oh.
Plagiarism, yes. I didn't know that he
Yes.
cheated in law school.
Well, if you're going at this level, I would love to hear your report on Trump.
No, but we're talking about
Yeah.
Joe Biden right now, and Joe Biden plagiarized, and he got kicked out of the race
He did
as
plagiarize,
a result
yes.
of that.
Okay.
And there is other instances where his campaign launch website was plagiarizing some things 40 years later
Okay,
this time
so,
around.
okay.
So, I mean, he's not all that. There are some characters.
But what I'm just saying is that
Didn't
that
invite
now-
a foreign government to come interfere on our elections and, violate the Constitution and commit high crimes and misdemeanors.
I
But
applaud you.
Let's talk about
Unless-
alleged plagiarism
But that's
in law
not what
school. Which,
happened.
how many decades ago was that?
But
was that
Christine,
like 40 decades ago?
unless-
You know what? But you keep
unless-
saying that,
unless
and
he-
Trump didn't do that. He did not invite foreign interference in our election.
It-
you know
it's
what?
pretty clear
Hillary
that
Clinton
he did.
did. but he
Hillary
didn't.
Clinton did. She absolutely
There's
did.
no evidence of that.
Oh, absolutely. The Steele
David, we got to
dossier
go. Folks,
came from
we
Britain.
got to go. David in San Francisco, listening to us on YouTube. Go ahead, you're on the air.
Yeah, how are you, Bruce?
Hello.
Yeah, I'm disappointed for you, disappointed in you for not having any greens in there. That's what I am.
Well, you're on the phone, Dave.
By the
You're
way,
a
I've
small
got a heck
group.
of an echo coming back, so it's pretty distracting.
Sorry.
The first thing I thought of when I heard about this issue was that there was $250 million involved. And when you start realizing that Trump has been tied to organized crime for years, he's been money laundering for years, I remembered the old derivative scandal.
Sir, maybe this is why you're not on the air. What evidence do you have that Donald Trump has been involved in organized crime? Because let me tell you this. When I told you that, when I asked this question to Patrick Cotter, who was a longtime federal prosecutor in Brooklyn, he was the guy that got John Gotti. When I asked him once on this program during the campaign, this was during the campaign when Rudy Giuliani was running for president. I said, do you have any evidence that Rudy Giuliani, I asked the same question about Donald Trump, any evidence that any one of them have been involved in organized crime? And you know what he said? No, I don't.
Let's see, Roy Cohn, C-O-H-N. And Roy Cohn and Donald Trump palled around for 15
David,
years.
I'm not, you know what, there's a reason
Roy
why the
Cohn
Green
was
Party
the
is not on the air
attorney
tonight,
for-
and you are it. Let's go from San Francisco to Jacksonville, Florida, and let's hear from Arthur. Do you have some relevant, factual information to offer us?
For taking the call. I am a former career military officer. I served 26 years. I wanted to talk about the whistleblower and
Okay.
secondhand information.
Yes, sir, thank you.
The rules for whistleblower have not changed. What was on the website or on the form is what changed. But that did not stop anyone from entering a whistleblower complaint. But the other thing that I really wanted to mention is that some of the folks on the panel tonight were talking about deep state. And I've heard that a lot over the past few years. And as a career officer, who served with a lot of other career individuals who were not military, that's a personal affront. Even though there may be different political persuasions, everyone I've ever come in contact with did not let that hinder them from doing their job or being professional.
Well, that's
Well,
very good.
Arthur-
Unless have you ever heard of Peter Stroke?
Yeah, I would encourage you to read Peter Stroke's emails with Lisa Page.
So
We respect your service, sir.
Of the thousands of employees that work for the FBI, if you can point out two that completely invalidates the entire organization.
Probably.
No,
Whenever
it doesn't
whenever a cop
invalidate.
kills somebody, it's just a few bad apples, right? And let's use the few bad apples example here.
Arthur, we got to pause right now. We'll pick up with Phil in a moment. Thank you for your call. And Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Before we continue, let me just mention something that I mentioned a couple of months ago, and that is we have a GoFundMe page to support the ongoing operations of this program for 2020. If you like this program and you want to continue the balanced presentation on America's radio stations, you go to the GoFundMe page. It's easy to find. Then look up Beyond the Beltway. Every dollar that you contribute is a dollar that will go exclusively 100% for the ongoing operation of this program in 2020 to provide an opportunity each and every Sunday night for you to hear both sides of an issue. It may not be tonight. We didn't give the Green Card Party a chance because they were developing a year-old history, like 50-year-old history. So we're not going to go there because we think the important issues are right before us, and each and every one of us know what they are. Let us go to Kathy, listening to us in Austin, Texas, on KLBJ. Go ahead.
Hello there. How
Hello.
are you?
Fine.
I keep hearing about the things that President Trump didn't say but meant, but no one seems to bring up the interview that Vice President Biden at that time, he was at the Council on Foreign Relations, bragging about how he had the Ukrainian prosecutor fired, or if they didn't fire him, he would pull money away from them. And so the Ukrainians evidently did fire the prosecutor and did get their funding. And this is on YouTube. I did go back and listen to it before I made my call. And that's one of the things that prompted Giuliani's investigation into the Hunter Biden situation and how Biden may have been involved. So that is clear evidence. You can go to YouTube and see his.
Have you seen? Have our Democrats? Have you seen that video?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and what's your reaction to the video? Because I think most people would probably agree with Kathy. It certainly didn't look good.
Yes, so with the video, the proper channels would be to have the president go to the DOJ and to have a proper investigation through our own government, through our own intelligence. And again, this is a huge distraction. We keep missing the point that he asked a foreign government to start intervening, and that's the major problem. So this whole Biden thing, it is an absolute distraction. And if President Trump actually wanted to root something out and not just use it for own political gain, he would have gone through the proper channels.
And do you believe that if Donald Trump went to, let's say, our FBI or CIA and asked them to investigate this case, do you think the Democrats and the media would just turn the other cheek and say, that's okay, it's a proper use of our FBI to introduce, to investigate Joe Biden's son?
If there's a violation of U.S. law, it's absolutely within the proper context.
Oh, yeah.
If
So
it's
the
a violation of
Democrats wouldn't have said-
Ukrainian law,
So the Democrats wouldn't say anything about that, right?
well, the
We're
Democrats,
gonna use the
Democrats
FBI.
will
It's
do-
speculation because it wasn't done. He didn't
Right.
go through proper channels. What we do know is he asked a foreign government to intervene, and that broke the United States law. There's no evidence that Biden or Hunter has broken any United States law.
He did not ask a foreign government to intervene. I want to quote exactly what he said.
Well,
He asked them
that's
to
a summary,
investigate.
so
The
that's not a
summary-
quote.
Again, that's all we have to work with here, okay? We have the summary to work with. So I agree with you. It's a summary, all right? It's a read-up. Trump tells Zelensky, the other thing, this is at the end of the call, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that, so whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging, that's what the caller just referenced, that he stopped the prosecution, so if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me. Look, Trump shouldn't have done this. I want to be on record on this show. He shouldn't have done it. It was wrong to do it. But he is not inviting foreign interference into the 2020 election by that one statement regarding one of 24 candidates running for president by the
Was he
Democrats
asking
right
for
now.
something of value?
All right, we're
He's asking
over.
for an investigation.
We talked about that earlier. Let's go to George listening to us on KTSM in El Paso, Texas. Go ahead, George. Are you there?
Alexis down here in Texas.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the reason I'm calling is not for that reason, but because of the moderation in Chicago view that is expressed on your program would leave me in the dire straits here in the American Southwest, because I feel that in the House, I think they've taken a step forward that they're not going to be able to justify, because they can't really show that the president's actions with regard to the presidency of Ukraine actually was going to contribute to his reelection. That in fact, that I'm just curious as to wondering whether it's just coincidental that it's Joe Biden who was being asked to be inquired into by way of the president's conversation with the president, that if it were another individual, would there be as much hurrah about it as is being expressed by the committee chairman and women who are responsible?
No,
for
I think the question here is that he is the president's at least perceived major competitor at the moment, although his polls are slipping, and I think it may be it may be slipping away. Let me go. Thank you very much for George. Christine, to you. All of this stuff. I mean, Joe Biden is going to be put on the defensive, which, as I said before, he's not really used to being on the defensive. And my question to you is he damaged goods? If you were to look at all the potential candidates that could run against the president, I think you would agree that it's better to win by moving in a positive way. Do you think all the negative stuff that the president is bringing up, does it make Joe Biden damaged goods?
Yeah, I reject the premise that he's damaged goods because, again, there's no evidence that Joe Biden or Hunter Biden have violated any United States laws.
How
and
about
that
the
this
appearance?
is all of a giant distraction for a president who has violated our
How
laws.
about the appearance of it? The question I asked at the beginning of the broadcast this evening, as a Democrat, as a liberal Democrat, are you comfortable knowing that the Vice President of the United States many years ago had a son sitting on the board of a company that was being investigated for corruption in the Ukraine when the Vice President was in charge of the U.S. relationship with the Ukraine? Let's just talk.
So
you know,
my
you don't
understanding
want to
is
be.
that no corruption was found, right?
No
So-
corruption was found. I'm asking about the
so
appearance.
again, this is
that an appearance of impropriety?
I think that they're using this where, one, no corruption was found, two, there's been no violation of U.S. law, to take political swipes at Biden that are unjustified and then distract from the whole real issue here, which is, again, the president violated the law.
So
The
I would
president
just,
didn't violate the law, but what he did do, or rather what Biden did, was get the prosecutor fired who was trying to get Biden's son's company.
Was this the
hurt.
corrupt prosecutor
Yeah.
who was trying to? Oh,
It
so
was-
yeah,
it was-
he was
well,
completely
no,
above
I'm
board
sorry.
in the
It was-
motivation of
I
the
misspoke.
prosecution in the
It was-
first place.
It was the guy who the deep state people in Europe were saying he was corrupt, but this is a guy who was trying to put an end to Burisma's power in Ukraine.
So question, from
and
now
again,
on,
Biden never raised his hand and told anybody else that his son was doing business and getting $50,000 a month. This son who has kind of been in and out of jobs
Okay,
and in
let's
and
look
out
at
of
what
drug
Ivanka
rehab.
is doing over in China.
No, but we're talking about the Ukraine situation. I would submit to you that the betting markets and the drop that Biden has suffered as a result of this is a fatal blow. You know, I'd love to see you guys run Biden, though.
Well,
But-
I would submit to you that the president committing high crimes and misdemeanors is going to get him impeached and removed
You
from
know, if you
office.
He
say that
hasn't
4
done
more
the-
times, that will mean it's true.
Yeah.
If you use that expression
You
4
keep
more
going to a
times.
distraction issue
no, it's
as
not a
opposed to
distraction.
talking about
You
what the
keep
president
saying
Convicted
that
him.
Biden has done something that you have no evidence of.
Yes.
And you keep
And
saying
that-
that
got the
Trump
guy
has
So
done
fired.
now we're
You
at an
bragged
impasse.
about
We have-
having the
So
we
now
have
we're
a
at an
summary.
impasse.
We have
that you
a
believe what you
whistleblower.
believe, and we believe what we believe. And because we can't find a middle space to agree on something, this is where we are. And this is the microcosm of where we are as a country.
right
Because
about
we
that.
can't
You're right.
talk to each
Yeah.
other.
Yes,
I
no,
agree. Love it.
And I don't know, as a dare I say this, as a public intellectual, I don't know intellectually what space to meet you in. Because
How about the
there's
space of
facts,
truth?
We're having
there's
a tr-
facts that exist that you want to do a Kellyanne Conway that there's somehow alternate facts.
No.
They're facts. He asked for a favor.
I
That's
just
in the
read-
transcript,
I just
right?
read what he
That's
said.
in the transcript.
It was very,
He's
very-
Do you think that's
asking of
appropriate?
a
45
foreign
minutes.
leader.
Do you think that's
I've
appropriate?
been on record saying it's inappropriate. You called it high
Okay.
crimes and misdemeanors about 10 times on this show. Great talking point, but you're not going to get this guy convicted in the Senate based
Because it's
on
not
this
even going to
enough.
go to trial in the Senate.
Does
Let's be
every-
clear
well,
about
one,
that.
we-
Moscow
there's
mentions
more
that
conversations
Ladies and
on
gentlemen,
that coded
ladies
server.
and gentlemen, in the court of public opinion, the people that don't watch all the Sunday shows, they don't listen to this show. They get their news from someplace else. And they decide at the last minute who they're going to vote for. Are they going to give enough thought to the term high crimes and misdemeanors? Most of them don't know what that means because a lot of members of Congress don't know what it means because you're still looking for it. You're looking for something other than a phone call, an inappropriate, I would agree with Josh, an inappropriate phone call by the President of the United States with a foreign leader. Does the average Joe out there in Keokuk, Iowa, do they view that as a high crime and misdemeanor? And by the way, let's throw this president out when we're less than a year from going to the polls and throwing him out.
There's a poll that shows
That's
that
the
nearly
question.
2/3 of Americans believe that Trump's crime is a serious problem, and then a CBS poll today said that 55% of Americans support the inquiry.
Okay,
She
they-
And
used
as
the
more
word
facts,
crime again.
and as
It's
more
not
facts come
high
to light,
crimes and
I can't
misdemeanors.
Republicans are
imagine
gonna have
that
to-
66% of Americans have found that the president has
It's
committed a
harder to
crime.
follow. It's not a blowjob in the White House.
That's
story
right.
from Chicago. We continue. Let's go to Roger listening to us on KLBJ in Austin, Texas. Go ahead, Roger. Hello?
With the chair there to control your guests?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Christine has got to stop putting out her opinion as fact. There's nothing in that phone call where Trump asked the Ukrainian people or their government to come into our elections. That's just silly. And this stuff about these obstruction things listed in the Mueller report, they're allegations. Even Mueller didn't put them down as being obstruction. And if you look at most of it, it's just silly nonsense. And no one is claiming that any of that's factual. In fact, even the stuff with like Comey and Trump, that discussion was hearsay. And you're an attorney, you should know better. You know, what's happening here is the Democrats are grasping to take down Trump. They started with the Access Hollywood. Then they moved on to Stormy Daniels and some kind of campaign finance. Then it was the Emoluments Clause and the Post Office Hotel. And then it was the Russians. And then it was the recession is coming because the curve's inverted. and then it's obstruction, and now it's
Roger,
just phone
Roger,
calls.
Roger, can I ask you a question, Roger? Let me ask you this.
Yes.
And you're a regular listener, so I'm sure you're raising your right, and you're giving me the straight answer to this question. Within your sphere of influence, the people you work with, play with, whatever the case may be, there's probably maybe 35 or 40 people that are within that first range of for most people. Are most of them people who agree with you politically?
No.
Okay. If that's the case, and I trust your answer, those people who don't agree with you politically, have you heard from them as to whether or not there's any fatigue about Donald Trump? Are they tired of him being picked on by the media? Are they tired of him being picked on by the Democrats? Or are they just tired of him talking on TV all the time?
I'd say it's a split decision there. I think most people are really tired of this trying to get him. Others have resist and persist and, stickers on their cars. Mm-hmm. They're never going to be convinced any other way. And to be honest with you, Bruce, I avoid dialogue in this realm with most of those people because they're like Christine. You're never going to change their perspective. And no amount of facts is going to make any difference because they're going to view those through their personal political partisan lens.
Okay.
As you do, Roger?
As I do? Well, no, I read all the information, and and I hear all these things that people say, and it's like, did you bother to look at the documentation? Because it doesn't say the things that you believe.
What news sources do you read, Roger, if you're reading a variety of information? Can you give off some national titles that you frequently visit on both sides of the aisle?
I read the Times, I read the Post, I read the LA Times, I read MSNBC, I watch the NewsHour every night. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot of internet research, particularly on the specific things that the news people are talking about.
Right.
I also watch a couple of the majors, ABC and CBS most of the time, and I watch all of the talk shows on Sunday morning that I can.
Okay, good. And then he ends his week by listening to Beyond the Beltway. This guy is the most balanced guy you can possibly find. I think the founding fathers would be very proud of you. By the way, I had an idea that I shared with a friend today, and I want to just get out there. I think that when something like either the Mueller report or the complaint by the whistleblower or the transcript or the summary of the phone call, I think it would be a good service for somebody. Maybe there's an app that's like this, but I think it would be a news service, and it could come from either Fox or it could come from MSNBC or someone else, where you could get an audio version of that document, where maybe one of their anchors is reading it. They can't ad lib. There's no, this is just, here's the straight poop. Because I don't think a lot of Americans read as much as they should. And this is, I know you're a big audiobook guy, are you not, Marty?
That's right.
What do you think of that idea?
I haven't read a book in years.
What do you think of that idea?
I think it's a terrific idea because people don't read enough and
I agree.
What do you think of that idea?
Over the last year and a half, I'm an avid book reader, but I read through audio. I'm a big fan of audio.
What about our Democrats? What do you think? Do we have you're shaking your head.
Bruce, that's my professional discomfort. I critique my students for not being good writers, and that's because they don't read enough. Their writing is informed by reading, and so I am always about the reading, especially for important things.
Christine, what about you? Is that a good idea for the people? People should read, but they don't, they did.
I mean, I agree. Reading is very important, but we also need to increase the information that people are hearing and listening to. And so if we're going to increase availability of information and so that more people will be informed, I think that's good. But we also need to be pushing people should be reading more.
Yeah, no, I think it's a combination, but I think it would be a good thing to offer from one of the news organizations. If one did it, the other would do it. But the key thing is you've got to believe that they're reading They just want the facts. They just want what's on the paper, and then they can debate it. And they read the footnotes. Anyway, that's our suggestion. We got 75% approval of that idea. The professor is holding out. You got to go to college. You got to do your homework.
Sorry.
Fair enough.
Bill Beverly,
Sorry.
thanks very much for
Thanks,
joining
Bruce.
us. Christine Stambarger, thank you very much. Good luck. Schombacher. Schombacher. B-A-C-H-E-R. Thank you very much. Nice job on your maiden voyage. Also, Josh Cantor, we thank you very much. Marty Garrity, thank you very much as well. Our thanks to Andrew Marshall and the ever popular Fritz Goldman for their assistance in the production of this program. Sorry we couldn't take all of our calls this evening. I'm Bruce DuMont. Good night from Chicago.